They can do surveillance first before an attack.
It's not easy to get a guns license in Malaysia.
Efforts of tightening this legally is quite limited also because it's just focusing on the possession.
When it comes to court, I go back to the issue of law. It could not address the current situation, the current smuggling situations.
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. I'm Amalina Kamal. Now, this particular episode is actually an expansion about gun ownership, the illicit trading of firearms, and how do we go about understanding the loopholes of the criminalities that we see being reported today. Now, for this particular episode, of course, we want to zero in on the acts that we have here in Malaysia governing the use of firearms and the possession of firearms. Of course, we have the Arms Act 1960, which remains the primary legislation governing firearm ownership in Malaysia. And we also have the Firearm Increased Penalty Act, which under it, Section 3 in specific, highlights a strict prohibition where no person can possess, carry or use any firearm without a valid license or permit. And the other one is Section 5, which highlights that civilian ownership is prohibited within the context of automatic weapons, and not just that, grenades and bombs, limiting the legal firearms to single shot, semi-automatic categories, but of course, under strict conditions. And what's important to understand here is that even the discretion of who can use or carry a weapon rests with the chief of police of the respective states. Now, we want to evaluate again the applications that we have today based on security clearance, the necessities of all the laws and the legal frameworks that we have today, as well as whether or not it's suitable or can it adapt to the needs of the present time. Now, joining me on this particular discussion is, of course, an individual who's not necessarily new to the show, but new to the set, Salim Bashir, criminal defense lawyer. Thank you so much, Salim, for being on the show.
Thank you, Amalina, for having me in the studio.
Right.
This is one of the rare occasions where I came over to NST after being outside and never been here for some time, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm honored to actually have discussions on one of the rarest topic that normally people talk in public.
Right.
The reason being, people always find that, the authorities will find it that gun law is not important. Unfortunately, because of the
Incidents, right? That
the
we
surge
see.
of situations where people have seen publics are purchasing guns and ammunitions without license, we find it is timely for us to discuss on the law governing gun possessions in Malaysia.
Or at least the movement of it, right?
Yes.
No, because, okay, as we know, there have been a spike in fatal shootings last year alone, right? But of course, it depends on the level of violence that we see. And only recently, we saw the Kota Tinggi triple murder case, right? Which happened in a food court out of all places. So it's easy for us to just report based on the crime, but there is a bigger question behind it, meaning is Malaysians' public spaces safe enough? And the other bigger one is how come people can carry guns so easily and people can be shot down so easily? So we go back to the question of, are our laws intact? What is the issue here? Is it the law itself, or is it just happens because it's coincident?
Okay, if you're talking about the adequacy of the gun law in Malaysia, we have one of the strictest law in the world, I would say. You see, ours is not as prevalent as that happens in our neighboring countries. We have two major laws in relation to this. We have Arms Act 1960. We have Firearm Increased Penalty Act 1971. Apart from that, we even have Corrosive and Offensive Weapons Act. Not many people know this, but we have Corrosive Offensive Weapons Act. For example, in a situation where you use an air gun, that may not may not be entrapped under these two laws, the major laws, but it can actually maybe be an offence under the Corrosive and Offensive Weapons Act. You see, so we have laws that governs situations in all circumstances of a case where people carry guns without permission.
Right. So again, when people say to tighten the law, what does it really mean? I mean, from a lawyer perspective, from the or the legal fraternity perspective, what sort of gaps needs to be addressed so that certain cases don't even come to court?
Well, I would say that in relation to the sentence, yeah, that is now being used, we have Section 3 for purpose of if a person discharges firearm in the course of a scheduled offence, for example, like robbery. In the course of a robbery, he discharges firearm. He can be sentenced to death or life imprisonment. Same goes to even the situation that if he possesses a firearm in the course of even without discharging, even in the course of committing a scheduled offence, he can also be sentenced for life imprisonment. And if you are just in possession of firearm or ammunitions, even without committing any offence, and you are in the situation where you possess the firearm or ammunitions without license, you can be sentenced up to 14 years imprisonment under Section 8 of the 5 PA.
Right, but again, the law is already pretty strict.
Yes.
So when people say to tighten the law,
You see, we cannot take a measure that every time there is a surgency of or prevalence of crimes on that particular area, we have to actually strengthen the law. The law is already there and is adequate. Even the sentencing are quite harsh, I would say. But what we need now is educations, holistic educations in informing public that you should not possess the gun without license. That is one. Another thing is enforcements.
right? Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
the gap in enforcements, do you think that, meaning we don't have enough audits, especially when it comes to the licensing itself, once it's issued, it's not being revisited?
Okay. You see, people can apply for license. Anyone can apply for license, and it seems to be pretty straightforward applications. You can actually download from the PDRM website, and you can apply for it. But the approval is very stringent. Okay, it's not easy to get a guns license in Malaysia. Apart from the general requirement, you have to be above 18. You have to be healthy mentally. You are stable. Apart from all that, PDRM are very strict in issuing license. You see? It's not something that you apply and you get it. So we cannot say that that obtaining license are easy in Malaysia. Okay, so that part is actually already dealt with by the operational side of the PDRM. What we need now is to curb the smuggling activity of firearms.
Okay.
This is something that we need to address on.
Yeah, we spoke about this in our previous episode about how these smuggling networks work, right? Sometimes it's like through porous borders, and even in some states, they are actually dealing with, the complication of having the arms being created within that locality, like the Bekakok in Sabah, for instance, and then officers, or at least the enforcement, have to actually literally pivot their approaches according to their intels. When these cases eventually, like when arrests do come and then they get charged in court, how complicated is it to prove that the possession of a firearm is indeed by the individual being accused?
Okay, first of all is jurisdictional problem.
Okay.
Okay, sometimes you see now I would say that Malaysia have a very strict border controls with the new chief appointed and all that, and they're very strict. However, the smugglers are very creative. You see, sometimes the gun perhaps nowadays can be even dispatched online. So how do you address that? You see, whether we're going to go against somebody who is sender or the person who actually accepting it.
Exactly.
Sometimes the person accepting may not be the right person that the particular gun being addressed to. He just being there to actually collect the particular puzzle, you see, which is meant for somebody else. You see, so this is a kind of a complexity that the police will face. Even when it comes to prosecution, transnational issues,
Right.
transnational law that comes along with this kind of situations is something that the prosecution will have to face. You see, it hampers sometimes the evidence from being presented properly in court. This is where we have Mutual Assistance of a Criminal Matters Act, which actually normally the Attorney General Chamber will seek the corporations from the foreign country to capture evidence or to present evidence and so on in our court
Right.
when a prosecution happens.
Right. No, because I'm like then thinking about the legal tightening of or efforts of tightening this legally is quite limited also because it's just focusing on the possession.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And having to how do I say, like having to have a carrot and stick sort of like measure to ensure that there's no guns being misused or firearms being misused. In reality, there's a lot of areas for everybody to just slip through the cracks.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think that it should be made like even more stricter in a sense whereby guns should only be applicable in certain, not just the body using it. If like you're working for the police, yes, obviously, but even like security, they cannot carry guns. Like jewelry store and stuff like that. Because in the past there have been cases, right, when robbery and then turn into shooting.
More often than not, licenses are issued for the purpose of hunting and spotting activities. You see, but the PDRM, of course, they have discretions to actually issue license for those who are in the security line, security business. You see, they have the permit, more so like shotguns and all that.
Right.
You see, for the purpose of providing it for their guards. You see, but if we were to now ban that, it only escalate the risk for those who are in the gut business. You see? Because even if you want to actually provide guns for those who are in the security business, I was appraised the fact that you still need to get a permission from the PDRA, even you own a license, in order to actually buy and hand over to their guards to actually have it with them physically when they go around patrol.
Right.
You see, even for that purpose, you still have to report to the PDRM and get their permissions.
Right.
So the law is already there. You see, it doesn't mean that, it's a carte blanche that, the moment I give you the license, that means you can actually buy rifle and give it to anybody who's working under you. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Police still are having a control over this. Even if you have a license, individual have a license, they still have to report to the PDRM. Okay, on a monthly basis and so on. And even you have used it for your purpose, for the purpose of intended purpose, for lawful purpose of shooting, exercise. When you go for shooting range exercise, the barrels, the magazines,
Right.
the magazine or used ammunitions must be shown to the PDRM.
Right.
You see, for the purpose of reporting.
After use as well,
After
right?
use.
Understood. No, because we spoke about having the illegal channels be the gap, at least in terms of how certain firearms lands on people who are not supposed to even own them, right? But border control was something that you also mentioned. It needs to be tightened, but with the faith that we have on who's heading it today, probably this can be curbed, not entirely, but it can be surveilled further so that there's no leaks again, meaning
Yes.
like new weapons,
Yes.
scary weapons, because
Yes.
also we live in a time of crisis today, right?
Correct.
And it's not just conventional weaponry. We have advanced technology weaponry that can actually scan people or scan the state. Like they can do surveillance first before an attack.
Correct.
Right? So, but this borders into like national security aspect. When we're talking about today is in terms of civilian use lah. In court, how many sort of prosecutions have you seen that certain weapons or firearms are not even from Malaysia? It's actually sourced outside.
More often than not, is not from Malaysia.
Okay.
I have defended cases in the past of a firearm that being used for robbery okay, where the firearm upon inspection and all that is not from the country. There are even a situation where the accused actually made a firearm on his own. You see, because of his experience working in army and all that, so he have used his expertise actually to make his own gun.
Right.
You see, so and as far as the firearm definition is concerned in Malaysia, is lethal barreled weapon that could discharge bullets or or other substance that could kill or hurt a person is already considered firearm. You see, so therefore we have an issue whether even if the firearm is not smuggled from outside, we also have a situations now
Yalah,
with
can be.
the social media, YouTube, DIY, teachings, how to make a gun. You see? So some people could even try to make a gun.
So the crackdown should be made even on that aspect then, like in terms of like if you're inciting or not even inciting, if you're like alluring people to actually create
Yes.
your own weapon. So this is something that like we have to put bigger attention
That's
to.
true. You touched on a raw nerve. We could also, apart from this, because people are creative, people are trying everything now. So there could be also a possibility that people wanting to create their own gun. They want to make their own gun based on what they see from the videos, that teaches them how to make guns. So this is something that the government should look into. Whether we have this sort of videos available in the mass, for that people might follow.
Right, I understood. I mean, I do appreciate that you're trying to like focus the current situation by having to control what's happening domestically. But again, the cross-border sort of situation is something that we cannot ignore because, as you mentioned, more often than not, we have cases whereby certain firearms or certain weapons are not even, it's traced from outside Malaysia. So from the legal perspective, how complicated is that when you have to now work with overseas legal authorities to have to like solidify a case?
Correct. You see, we have to be fair. Those days, the border is very porous. You see, but now, I think they're having a very tighter and strict control over the movements in the border. So therefore, this sort of smuggling can be curtailed. However, over a period of time, people are becoming, as I said earlier, becoming more creative, more brave to actually smuggle this in alternate way. You see, by air or even by some other means. You see, so based on that, the police will have an intelligence to actually to address this. However, when it comes to court, I go back to the issue of law. Our law has been structured in such a way that maybe, it could not address the current situation, the current smuggling situations.
Okay.
You see, the where they use creative methods, how to get ammunition in. You see, so this is something that government should look at, whether we need to have a new amendments, not a new set of laws, but amendments and additions to whatever we have now, whatever gun laws we have now, to actually to address this sort of smugglings. You see, by way of postals, or any other way.
Right.
You see?
Okay, so I do want to specifically follow up with that point about having to amend laws that curb the transportation of such goods that fuels the illicit trading here, right? When we look at the smuggling activities that happen on our borders, it's not just firearms, obviously. It's also in terms of wildlife, in terms of food, contrabands, and to a very serious extent, it's like human smuggling, right? Do you think the enforcement capacity within Malaysia is too stretched thin that they're not able to address these specific cases on its own? Because we're like, kita longgokkan semua dalam satu.
But if you're talking about the other things that contraband items that being smuggled in, of course it happens. Even drugs, for that matter, it does. You see, but it have a specific legislations to address that.
Okay.
But in terms of firearm, we have a specific statutes in our books that that governs this smuggling of guns.
Okay. Rest assured lah, in a
Yes.
sense. Okay.
So I don't see it being overlapped. Personally, I don't see it being overlapped. Just that on that particular statute, now particular law, we need to actually extend it. If there is a need, the drafters need to actually extend it to include other form of smugglings. Instead of physical smugglings, it could be, by way of air,
As you
postal
mentioned, okay.
smugglings,
Okay.
etc. This is the kind of things that the government need to look into.
So the you've repeatedly mentioned this. So meaning these are the grey areas then,
Yes.
right? Obviously. Okay. Then
And also perhaps we could also make it an offence for those who have actually viewing and learning how to make weapons. You see, this is something that may not. I won't say may not. Is not there in the law at the moment.
Right.
Yeah. In future they could. Maybe
assessing
MCMC or whatever,
Right.
could actually look into this. If you're looking at about a person who wanting to commit or have an intention to commit a lawful offence using a firearm, of course there is a law at the moment, even under terrorism. Our terrorism law also can be used against them if there is an element of subversive elements.
Okay.
You see, involving firearm. Okay. Other than that, of course, if there is a proven of unlawful intentions, they can even be subjected under the FIPA, Firearm Increased Penalty Act, okay, or even the Arms Act. You see, not necessarily we have to wait for such an offence to happen in order for us to prosecute.
Understood.
Is it?
I mean, to kind of like be cautious from the get-go,
Yes,
basically.
because if you're looking at Section 3, Section 5 and all that, it's talking about after an act.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, after the actus reus, so-called, where exhibiting or discharging of firearm happened. But we have also a situation where in just a mere possession of a firearm, it could constitute an offence under Section 8.
I mean, I think somewhat we've seen that being reported earlier in the week where a housewife somewhere in Kelantan was arrested in possession of very serious weapons, yeah. M16, one of it. So in that particular case, right? So how complicated is it to prove that that woman is innocent? Because as what was reported, she said, "Oh, that's not mine. That's my husband," without further, complicating the current issue or her arrest at the moment. Not talking about the case, but having to understand situations like this.
Yeah, you see, prosecution have to prove the fact that she not only owns, but she have intentions to. She knows that there is a firearm. Mere possession of a firearm could lead to you being prosecuted and for trafficking firearm.
It's like similar with drugs, lah, right? In this
Yes, if
particular
you are in
context.
possession of a firearm, okay, and it happened to be your house, you're without access of anyone else, and if the prosecution can prove that, it could be an act of trafficking firearm, because under the law, if you are in possession of 2 or more firearm, you are considered trafficker of a firearm.
2 or more.
2 or more. You see, and the sentence is quite harsh. You can be sentenced to life imprisonment or death.
Right. Salim, maybe you can also, this is like a PSA to our audience as well, right? What constitutes as a serious weapon here? Because a lot of people don't realize if you carry a knife even, or you carry like a taser, which actually is quite illegal for you to, not quite, but it's illegal for you to possess. And when there's a roadblock, then, so maybe you can explain what it constitutes as like a serious weapon here.
Serious weapon, you see, when they say a weapon is a weapon, okay? A serious weapon means it can cause injury or death to someone. You see, so that is serious weapon. Our knife could be a serious weapon. Our tooth could be a serious weapon in certain countries.
What about pepper spray?
Pepper spray, yes. You see, but pepper spray, it may not be as lethal. May not cause fatality.
Okay.
You see, it can cause injury to a certain extent to eye and all that, but it may not cause death to someone. You see, so it may not be constituted as a serious weapon.
Okay.
And for example, like taser or air gun.
What about
may
the
not
fist
fit
thing?
the fist.
The fist and the knuckle.
Yes, knuckle
thing.
duster.
Ah, okay.
Knuckle duster. Thanks for asking. It may not fall within the definition of firearm or even arms act. but you cannot escape the dragnet. You might get off prosecuted under the Corrosive and Offensive Weapons Act.
Okay. Yeah, so basically it's pretty tight here in Malaysia,
Yes.
right? Yeah, okay.
You see? So same goes to taser and also or air gun. You see? So all this is something that may not fall within the firearm, in a strict definition of firearm, but you can still be prosecuted for owning an offensive weapon,
Okay.
quote unquote offensive weapon.
The maximum sentence for that would be?
For example, it depends. For example, like if it falls under the category of offensive weapon, you can be actually sentenced to maximum of 7 years. You see, under Section 6 or under Section 7 of the Offensive Weapons Act, Corrosive and Offensive Weapons Act. You see, so if you, let's say you spill acid to someone's face, you can be subjected to the same thing, same law, Corrosive Offensive Weapons Act, because it's not a physical weapon per se, or doesn't fall within the strict definition of Firearm or Arms Act. Okay, but you can still be prosecuted under the Corrosive and Offensive Weapons Act.
Right. But I mean, overly strict amendments, a lot of people have already argued, can create quite a compliance burden, because then you'll be like, which act do we refer to? I think that's the perception of it all. But as a legal practitioner, you don't see the overlap happening. Yeah.
I don't see that happening because we have respective acts that caters for respective for distinct offences, and Amalina, you are asking how the public are so concerned about us strengthening the law. We have a lot of laws in this country governing other offences, but the offences in that particular areas that carries a heavy sentence are still surging. For example, like drunk driving. You see, people still going around, driving, while under intoxication.
Yeah, which has caused more deaths than gun
Exactly.
deaths. I mean, in a
You
way,
see?
yeah.
And the law has been amended for a couple of years back. Okay, increasing the sentencing for drunk driving. But you can see now, for the last couple of months, you can see the the rampancy of such an offence. You see, being reported in the media.
Right.
You see, so this is the issue that we have. Having laws per se, or strengthening the sentence per se, is not a solution.
Right.
We have to go beyond that. I'll go back to the issue of having educations, or providing education to the public, and also strengthening the enforcements. You see, and for that to happen, if there is a need for us to amend certain laws to cater for the modern developments of smuggling activities, then I think we should.
Well, that's nicely put and nicely summarized. Obviously, what we've established is that the law itself doesn't need to be tightened even further because it's already there. Probably in terms of how we can expand, yes. How we can look at transborder crimes, right? And then how we can actually also ensure that our young, or at least just general Malaysians, understand the gravity of owning or possessing certain items that can eventually lead to death if not careful.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you so much, Salim, for being here on Beyond the Headlines. I
Most welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Amalina.
Hopefully, we can sit down and discuss later, maybe in the future, how we navigate with the AI technology that's, we see in war times, right? I think that's another trajectory that we can explore into.
That's right.
Thank you again.
AI is becoming the thing now.
Yes. And the modern warfare is also quite concerning as well because they read your behavior through your actions, or at least your routine, right? It's not necessarily what we deem as like, oh, you're surveilling us through our movements. No, not even that anymore.
Obviously, they are doing the thinking for us.
Yes, true.
Based on our actions. Yes, that's true.
We are like being influenced to do something that we don't even want to.
Exactly.
But the pathway is allowing us to.
It's being narrowed and directed to that. Yes.
Understood. Thank you again.
Thank you, Rina. Thank you.
And to our audience, if you do like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to also turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You'll not only get NSC Beyond the Headlines update other NSC Online's news reports will be delivered to you. Now follow us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, as well as TikTok. My name is Amalina Kamal, and we'll see you next week.